Mike the Truth Jackson, back with another edition of Fighters Talk. And today I'm joined by, look, it's been 4 years, 5 years.
It's been a minute.
It's been a while. It was with the joint out in Corpus.
Yeah. As far as yeah, man.
Our first interview.
UWF, yeah.
There we go, UWF.
I thought you were talking about since I fought. I was like, no, it ain't been that long. But yeah, UWF, man. That was about 4 years ago. That was my third professional fight.
We've come a long way.
A long way.
Anyways, today I'm here joined by Mr. Roger Narvaez. Man,
Yes, sir.
it's been a while
It's been a minute.
since you've been in the cage.
Yep.
What was the reason for the long layoff?
Well, my last fight was at the UFC, I believe it was 195, when Dos Anjos and Pettis fought for the title. And, I fought Elias Theodoro and just caught a bad break, man. He threw a kick, literally snapped my arm in the second round, and took a plate and 3 screws initially, and started coming back. I was actually scheduled to fight earlier this year for another big promotion, and then during training it broke again. So I got a 9-inch plate now that's got 9 screws, and this thing ain't breaking. So that's why the wait has been so long. But I've been consistently training and preparing for this moment. I'm just excited to be healthy enough to get back in there and do my thing.
Now, real quick, let's talk about the UFC experience. If I'm not mistaken, from the Corpus in the southern region, you're one of the first to make it into the UFC.
Yeah. Actually, out of my hometown, Corpus Christi, Texas, born and raised. I'm the first and only fighter to make it to the UFC, and first, therefore, being only fighter to actually win. So that was quite an honor and accomplishment in itself. Setting back 9 years ago when I first started training, I never thought I'd be fighting, much less fighting for the biggest organization in the world. So it was definitely a dream come true and a great opportunity to showcase my talents.
The entire experience, you were there for 3 fights. What was it like for you to be there? Outside of, representing Corpus, just the UFC experience itself, how was it for you?
Man, it was great. I mean, the one thing about the UFC is that, they get you there on Tuesday, you're there all week for fight week. And what that really does is it lets you just focus on the fight for a whole week. They did a really good job of taking care of the fighter and making sure that fighting and cutting weight was the only concern for them of that week. After I got injured, they did a great job of taking care of me medically. I saw the best doctors in Corpus, got operated on, and everything was good. So the whole experience, just being there at that level, seeing the guys that have fought for years and years that I've been watching, and actually getting to compete in the same cage, the same ring as them, was quite an honor. And the whole experience was is really surreal. Looking back, I wish I would have taken a time to sit back and just embrace it all. Me and my coach, one thing we made sure and said and did was, we don't want to be one of those fanboys running around getting autographs fight week. We want to act like we've been there before. But looking back, I wish I would have embraced it all a little bit more. Talked to Duke Rufus. Shout out to Duke. We're part of his kickboxing association down in Corpus, and he was down coaching, I think, Bilal Muhammad in Hidalgo not too long ago, and we got to train and hang out. And that was one of the things that Duke said he loves to do is just meet new people. And I've been really blessed to meet guys like you, meet guys like Coach Bob, who's going to be cornering me this weekend, forming some of the great relationships that I've had through martial arts. And that was one thing that I wish I would have done a little bit more, is just, embrace the, take a step back, embrace what was actually happening, look around a little bit. But it's kind of hard when you get thrown in there. Everything's so surreal. And, when you got a 185-pound gorilla, staring across from you, trying to rip your head off, and that's what you're worried about, not necessarily getting autographs and photos and stuff, but definitely, after this fight, hopefully we get another call back, soon, and maybe I'll get another shot to really just take it all in next time.
Now, you mentioned Duke, and you mentioned, the guys training out in Hidalgo. uh, being that Corpus isn't a real, like, a big MMA city. You know, we've done shows out there with Legacy, and it just seems that people enjoy fighting, but maybe they don't support it as much as a major city like a Houston or even here in San Antonio. But for you to get to the UFC, the highest level, and then training, it's not necessarily the I don't want to say it's not high level of the gym that you're at, but you really don't get to train with higher level fighters that are also in the UFC. How do you feel you overcame that and still made it to the big show?
Well, I think there's a big misconception of guys that are in the UFC all train at these super camps. You've got the ATTs, you got the Black Zillions, you got the Jackson Wink, schools out there. But for the most part, man, a lot of the guys that are on the lower level coming up, and even mid-range guys, I mean, some of the camps that they train out of are just their friends, their buddies, and just guys that are really willing to sacrifice for the betterment of that individual. You look at a Stipe Miocic and who he surrounds himself with, and it's like a guy like that, he's not training with the top 10 heavyweights in the world. But damn, I mean, he's the heavyweight champ because of the work he puts in and because of the people that he surrounds himself with. So I was fortunate enough to surround myself with really positive people, people that are willing to sacrifice for the betterment of my career. And that's what I continue to do, man. I think that, Luke Barnett, when I fought him, was training at Alliance. He had some of the best fighters in the world in his camp. And I was literally up and back and forth training with Andrew Craig. Shout out to Andrew up in Austin. Going to Houston, training with you guys at 4 Ounce and at Team Took with them. And you can either sit back and say, I don't have these guys and kind of throw a pity party for yourself, or you can grind and put in work every day, every second, and that's what I do, man. And that's what I think has gotten me to the level that I was at, and had, made me enabled me to compete at that level. I didn't just go into the UFC. I mean, I beat Luke Barnett. In my opinion, I was beating Elias Theodorou, who's now 5-1, I think, in the UFC. Before I got the break, so I was competitive in there. And I did that with the resources I had at home and the people that I had surrounding me. So
Now I know you all at your gym, Weapons in Hand or Weapon in Hand. You're now affiliated with Corley Perez Muay Thai, or no?
Not officially affiliated. I train at Houston Muay Thai all the time. Coach Bob. I mean, he's like I said, he's going to be cornering me for this fight. He cornered me my last UFC fight and my legacy fight that I had last time I was in San Antonio. Me and the wife went up there not too long ago. Corley is a super awesome dude, and we're always welcome at that camp. But we're not technically affiliated with them yet.
Well, I do know you all have some affiliations. Who are the affiliates that you're with?
Yeah, well, technically our affiliate is with Rufus Sport Kickboxing Association. Good. Yeah, and that's through my head striking coach Rudy Valenzuela became associated with Rufus Sport, and I was at a different gym at the time, and I actually joined up with Rudy and started my own jiu-jitsu side of things. Which I'm not affiliated with anybody. I got my black belt under Hector Munoz, but I felt it was time to do my own thing, and so now that's kind of our sole association. But Coach Bob, I still consider him, as far as outside of Rudy, I consider him my coach. I mean, I'm not technically ranked under him, but he's my striking coach, and after Rudy, he's the next in command when it comes to my striking. So I just unfortunately haven't had the luxury to be up there as much as I would like to actually become affiliated. But Houston Muay Thai, I always represent for them, and they've always had my back since the start. So thank you to them.
Now you just mentioned that you branched off as far as jiu-jitsu. Did you open your own gym, or is it like what's the setup here for your jiu-jitsu program?
Yeah. Basically, the other gym I was at, everybody comes to a point where in their career or in their life where they just outgrow things at times, outgrow relationships, outgrow schools. And for me, I just wanted something to make my own. And where I was at was never going to be that. So, having that, I was bouncing from gym to gym. I said, let me, Rudy and all the guys at Weapons at Hand, great striking program, but they didn't have the jiu-jitsu aspect of things. And I was already training over there like 3 or 4 times a week. So I said, you know what? I'll just, Rudy had approached me. We had talked about it before. This has been something that we had mentioned like years in the making. And we just felt that it was time. I felt like God had really put it on my heart to take that step. And it was definitely a big, giant leap because of the fact that I figured I would be ruffling some feathers and maybe losing some of my main training partners. But at the same time, I felt for my family and for me, it was the right move to make. And so we moved to Weapons at Hand. I started my own jiu-jitsu program. I operated out of there. And, I'm excited, man. It's something that's my own. I teach my methods, my style of jiu-jitsu, and I get to teach guys that are still hungry, still fighting. Kids that are 22, 23 years old, and you see that fire, that their eyes light up when you're showing them a technique. So it's exciting, and I'm excited to represent for my school tomorrow night. Not only Weapons at Hand, but Narvaez BJJ.
Tomorrow night, again, you return to the cage, and let's say it's almost been a little over a year and a half.
Yeah.
It's been a little while, but you're stepping inside the Fury cage. You're headlining the card against Juan Torres. Now, Juan he's a former heavyweight. This is his first fight at 205, and for you, you're going up in weight. You're typically been fighting at 185, but today he came in a little bit overweight. First off, how surprised were you that he was so close to making weight?
I had seen videos of him, and actually I thought he would be pretty close because looking at his somebody had mentioned that they saw that he was only like 20 pounds away like 3 days ago.
Only 20
Yeah, well, for a guy like me, man, I cut a lot of weight. I lose 20 pounds in 4 days. So when I'm at the UFC, like 20 pounds for me, that's nothing. So I kind of had that mindset, but I was prepared for him to not make weight. So when he came in and he stepped on the scale and he was a little bit over, I was ready for that. A lot of people might think that he's gonna have a lot more size on me, but what people don't realize is I started off at heavyweight. When I first fight, I was 250, 248. And then I ended up dropping to light heavyweight and then eventually down to middleweight. So I'm used to throwing big boys around, and I used to be a big boy myself. So as far as the weight cut and everything, I'm just glad that that he got close enough. Because I had already told my coaches, I said, whether this guy makes weight or not, we're gonna fight. I got sponsors, that have already supported me with financially. I've got people that have been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this. There was no way that whatever weight he was, I was gonna fight. He could have stepped in there at 230, I would have still fought him. So I was a little surprised that he came that close, but I was already in the mindset that we're going to do this either way, so it wasn't a big deal for me.
Knowing that he's coming down from heavyweight so recently, again, like you've kind of gradually lost the weight. Taking, obviously you're biased for yourself here, but taking a step back, where do you feel, if at all, he has an advantage in the fight?
Yeah, watching Juan's fight, the advantage I give him, it's not anywhere on the physical side. I think it's all on the mental side. As far as Juan, he's tough, and he's the type of guy that he just likes to fight. He don't care who it is. I mean, he's fought ex-Bellator guys. He's fought in Bellator. He's fighting me. So that can be dangerous. I'm stepping in there with a guy that literally does this because he just loves to fight. That's the only advantage I really see for him. I don't, and not to disrespect him, I'm sure he trains hard, but I'm just on another level, man. I've trained with some of the best guys out there. I continue to get better. I've got a great, strength and conditioning coach at home, and my striking has evolved. People that are going to be expecting the silverback in the UFC are in for a surprise, because the silverback you're going to see is the one that was breaking people's faces open. And I mean, that's just to put it lightly. Like, I'm on a mission for this fight. I felt in the UFC I was a little reserved with my aggressiveness because, those guys are, you make one mistake at that level and it's it. But, I feel like I have the advantage in every aspect. I think my cardio is going to be better than his. I think my footwork's going to be better. I think my striking is going to be more technical. But not to underestimate him. He's a big guy. He hits hard, and I got to keep my chin tucked for sure.
Yeah, definitely at that weight, or your guys' weight, and even at heavyweight, one punch can definitely change. We've seen fights where guys really had no shot at winning, and then they landed a punch. I don't feel a lunky punch is a real thing. Because you have someone who threw a punch. Like they meant to throw the punch.
Exactly.
They meant to throw the punch, and you don't just throw a punch and not want to hit somebody, regardless if it's a ugly punch or clean, whatever. You threw the punch, and it landed, and the guy went out.
Exactly. You were trying to hit him. I agree. A lot of people when Anderson Silva, threw that leg kick and called it lucky when Chris Weidman checked it. I'm like, well, he tried to check it. I mean, that's what can happen. So, yeah, same thing in that aspect. When somebody throws a punch, they're not trying to whiff. They're not trying to hit you in the shoulder. They're trying to hit you in the face, So I definitely am going to have my guard up tomorrow night. But like I said, man, I just don't see it going any other way than me with my hand raised after this fight.
There you have it. The silverback, Roger Narvaez, headlining Fury FC 14 here in San Antonio, Texas. With the win here, I mean, we're trying to get the call. Hey, Cousin Mick is the new matchmaker. We know somebody in this position now.
He's legit, and I couldn't be happier for somebody. And I'm not one of these jock riders that started hitting him up left and right and tagging him in all his Facebook posts. I mean, I let the guy be. He's probably got so many groupies sending him their boxers that he didn't know what to do with them.
He's actually in Brazil right now for the what is UFC? I don't know what Brazilian country.
Yeah, I think he was in Sao Paulo because I have him on Facebook and I saw. The only thing is, man, you can't be drinking no Sapporo in Sao Paulo. You know what I'm saying? That's a Japanese beer. But Mick's another dude that, man, he's really, really solid. I'm glad. I actually used to spar with Mick back in the day when I trained with Bob and at 4 ounce, from time to time. And the cool thing about Mick is he's always been a real cool dude. And to see somebody get in there with his kind of character, I think it's a great thing for the UFC because he's gonna put quality fighters in there. He's not gonna just be throwing these bums in there and these, excuse my language, but suck asses in there. And, I haven't reached out to him or bugged him, but hopefully I put on a highlight reel of this fight, maybe the next one, and he notices that, and maybe then I'll tag him in a few of my posts or something,
Cousin Mick, we got to get the silverback back in the UFC where he belongs, representing Texas, Corpus, and all of us out here, man. Sure. Roger, glad to have you back.
Sure.
Good luck tomorrow night.
Thanks, man. Thank you, guys.